believe these people are known to you.
They're two of my school teachers. What are you doing here?
Where are we?
They must have followed you.
Welcome, everyone, to our second episode of our RetroBlasting Doctor Who series. Now, in many ways, this is the first official episode, since the first episode we did was introductions, but this is going to be the first episode that digs into an actual Doctor Who story. And we've chosen the very first episode from 1963, The Unearthly Child.
I'm not hindering you. If you both want to make fools of yourselves, I suggest you do what you said you do.
And I'm so glad that my friend and Doctor Who colleague, Mike Ippolito, is here with me to go on this possibly very long multi-year journey together through all of the multimedia of Doctor Who, not just the television show, but we're going to be looking at the audio adventures, the comics, the toys, the TV movie.
There's a lot of things you need to get across this universe. Warp drive, wormhole refractors.
Mike, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm like a Centauran going into battle.
You're serious, aren't you?
How familiar are you with the Hartnell era at this point in your Doctor Who consumption?
I've watched a few episodes. I've gotten through maybe most of his first series.
I can see by your face that you're not certain. You don't understand.
And that's kind of about as far as I've gotten. But this show gives me a chance to kind of start back, over again for stuff that I didn't remember.
I freely confess that the only episode of The Unearthly Child that I had seen prior to this was the very first part of the story. I had never seen the other three parts.
I knew you wouldn't. Never mind.
Part of that was due to the fact that I got addicted to the Blu-rays. And I thought, well, whatever plan they have for those seasons, I will wait for the Blu-ray releases.
That's not right.
So this was kind of a new journey for me because I'd seen the original episode before, but I'd never actually gone through the story to completion. Walk us through the beginning of The Unearthly Child, part one.
Initially, being out in the street with the police officer, and he kind of checks the door right there. And I think they just kind of led right into it to show the Tardis right away as, the main point of the show. And then it switches over to the school. Susan was at the school. And then Barbara has some issues with her classes, stuff like that.
Well, she seemed quite interested till I said I'd be willing to work with her at her home. Then she said that would be absolutely impossible as her grandfather didn't like strangers.
And to find out that she's really good at history.
She's a genius. Is that what she's doing with history?
Something like that. I had a talk with her and I told her she ought to specialize.
Back then, of course, you didn't know the whole story, but traveling in the TARDIS with her grandfather, you would know that she'd been through all these places, so she actually would rewrite the history books,
Don't be silly, Susan. The United States has a decimal system. You know perfectly well that we do not.
Of course, the decimal system hasn't started yet.
So what did you think of Barbara and Ian?
To me, I think they were looking out for her, being concerned where she goes, into, a dark junkyard.
I got her address from the secretary, 76 Totter's Lane, and I went along there one evening. Well, there isn't anything there. It's just an old junkyard.
Where do you live, Susan? I'm giving Miss Wright a lift. I've room for one more.
No, thank you, Mr. Chesterton.
To me, it was a little far out there to go and follow her to see where she goes. That to be a little intrusive there.
I suppose we are doing the right thing, aren't we?
You can't justify curiosity.
But her homework.
A bit of an excuse, really, isn't it?
And I was shocked, actually, to find out I had to hit the brakes because there are two versions of the pilot episode, the very first episode. Did you notice that?
Yes, actually, I found that out not too long ago. I would say in the last few weeks, kind of when I was going back to revisit this, that there was, I guess, an unaired pilot, which actually ran about 46 minutes. And then the original aired 22-minute, introduction, I guess, to the show.
Yeah. I got to tell you, the differences are stark.
What are you doing here?
We're looking for a girl.
We?
Well, good evening.
What do you want? What are you doing here?
We're looking for a young girl.
We?
Good evening.
What do you want?
To see the Doctor come out for the first time, they were looking for her, and then it became like a verbal altercation between Ian and the Doctor to see what's inside the box.
Why were you spying on her? Who are you?
And you could see he became very abrasive towards Ian.
You have no right to be here.
Open the door!
I certainly will not.
It's obvious in many ways why they reshot this.
I'm not being rude, but couldn't we deal with 2 active chemicals and get on with something else? Well, I'm not trying to be rude, but couldn't we deal with 2 active chemicals? then Wreck could turn blue all by itself and we can get on with something else.
And in other ways, you can almost hear the producer's notes and coming back and going, I really want you to reshoot this. One of the things that was really different about the pilot, Susan, is very otherworldly. Obviously, in the aired version, she's still discovered to be the granddaughter of this alien.
I knew something like this would happen. We stayed in one place too long.
But why should they follow me?
Is this really where you live, Susan?
Yes.
But in the pilot, she is truly ethereal. She's very much out to lunch.
She your problem too?
Yes.
You don't know what to make of her?
Nope.
She your problem too?
Yes.
And you don't know what to make of her?
Nope.
The humans perceive her as kind of off and crazy, but she's not. She's just a very, very vastly intelligent alien from another planet.
You can't simply work on 3 other dimensions.
3 of them? Oh, time being the 4th, I suppose.
And so it keeps cutting back to her kind of, having this affect where, she doesn't know how to relate to human beings. She's fascinated by learning and all that kind of stuff, but she's also way ahead of everybody that she's in school with. So it becomes this kind of performance, including this moment where she does this ink blot and then she puts the ink into the paper and she does the thing and then she pulls the paper out and then she starts doing like the beautiful mind thing where she starts drawing like lines, and you can see this intelligent mania going on with her. And then the other big difference I felt from a performance perspective, a lot of it's reshot, some of it's recycled, but a lot of it has been reshot, including the 2 teachers. But the doctor himself in the pilot is very sinister. Sinister in the sense that he's not a friendly individual by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
You can't keep us here.
And I know that Hartnell's doctor is known for being a little more cantankerous in many ways in general, but this particular original performance, he is
Very well, I can't stop you. I can't stop you.
He even yells at Susan the same way he yells at the 2 teachers.
You would insist on going to that ridiculous school. I warned you. That ridiculous school. I knew something like this would happen. We stayed in one place too long.
And in some ways, it's regrettable that they didn't pursue that further. But I can also see why the producers would be like, oh, for a first episode, we really want the main title character to be a little bit more likable and interesting. So let's not make him so hateful and, standoffish. I noticed in the unaired pilot that they were very specific with Susan when they finally figure out that she's this alien girl.
I was born in the 49th century.
What?
And then in the actual aired pilot, they vague book that back.
I was born in another time, another world.
Now look here, Susan, you...
And I found that very interesting that they decided to fudge that up a little bit, put some Vaseline on the lens there and be like, let's not get so specific about that. We might want to change that later. I have a feeling that there were some people involved who said, you can't put this on TV looking like this. The interior set of the Tardis. Now, I get it. They were using black and white early video broadcast cameras, so there wasn't as much detail even than there was 10 years later with video cameras. However, the walls of the Tardis, they have the 2 walls by the door with the big inset circles, the concentric circles. And then in order to economize the rest of that set as it was conceived, they simply printed those circles onto big rolls of canvas and then dropped them on the back wall. Now, normally this isn't an issue because it's all in black and white and they're far enough away from those that they're slightly out of focus. So it actually creates a good illusion. But that's if you're watching the aired pilot, because in the unaired pilot, you can actually see those rolls of canvas behind his chair are hitting the floor and wrinkled up. It looks like bad theater with big gaps between the different roll widths and stuff. So you're seeing through to the black curtains on the BBC soundstage. It's really slipshod. I can understand wanting to reshoot to try and finesse the performances, but I was shocked at how not pro that original production setup was, that production design. It was really sloppy. I have no problem with old effects and dated techniques and things like that, but it's always because I appreciate the careful craftsmanship that often goes into it. And I would assume they either whipped that guy into shape or got a different guy. And the TARDIS interior itself is a little modified as part of the reshoot. What did you think of the first cliffhanger and then the very first adventure location?
I guess, a time travel show, you could go pretty much anywhere that they chose to go to prehistoric times with the cavemen and things like that. I mean, I guess it was a pretty good choice to go there. And it had like that old 66 Batman cliffhanger.
Yes.
Where you got to wait a whole week to see where they ended up.
Hope for a miracle and stay frozen in your seats.
Now, yes, we have the ability to watch episodes back to back.
That last moment where you see that big hulking figure come up from the corner of the screen toward the TARDIS, I thought, well, they've got this part of the formula of Doctor Who figured out pretty well from the get-go. That's down.
Barbara and Ian are not fully sold on where they are.
Yes, that's the immediate view outside the ship. I don't believe it. You really are a stubborn young man, aren't you?
All right, show me some proof.
So now we're in the prehistoric world. I don't know exactly what country we're in. I don't think they specify where they are on Earth or if they even are on Earth. I'm pretty sure they are on Earth. We now have this tribe and they are having an argument because the leader of the tribe doesn't know how to make fire. And the last leader who died knew how to make fire. And so now they have this attitude that the leader of the tribe has to know how to make fire or else he's not the leader.
I am leader. I am the son of the great fire maker. But he does not show me how to put flames into the sticks.
Nobody else in the tribe knows how to make fire. And the old lady, the old crone of the tribe, is arguing that nobody in the tribe should discover how to make fire because it will only cause problems for all the people. Technically, this is what they call a historical. It's not an alien planet. It's not, Daleks, which it's a historical, which is what Doctor Who was greenlit on, the idea of educating children about the past. Doctor Who almost being like this cosmic Forrest Gump type character who keeps popping up in different key historical events.
Leonardo?
With the caveman thing, though, I freely admit that I was trying to find my footing with it a little bit. I thought the performances were fine. It was just more of a, wow, this is rather straightforward.
Take me back to my ship and I will make fire for you. All the fire you want.
More of your lies.
I'm so used to the techno babble of Doctor Who. I'm used to we've traveled into E-space and now or N-space or whatever it is. And now we've got to get here. And there's, reversing the polarity of the neutron flow to do this and that. And
we're adrift in E-space.
That is not here. You talk about back to real basics. It's like, we're going to take you back to before the light bulb.
To me, it was set up very simple. I guess maybe for budgetary reasons, but it served its purpose. The old style prehistoric setting, I think it turned out real well for the times of what they had to work with. Getting into where the cave people are communicating with one another, I think it was just too many words for the time frame.
Set them free.
They would have made fire. They would have made fire.
About calling somebody, I forget who it was, but calling somebody a liar.
Do you want a liar for your chief?
I'm going, you really going to know what that is back then?
Right.
It's just like maybe just too much dialogue for the time frame.
Bob has sent me this creature to make fire come from his fingers. I have seen it.
We have enough history to determine the early forms of communication, and calling somebody a liar back then, I don't think was really part of it.
Cal is a liar.
It's like the Star Trek thing. Every alien planet they beam down onto, they magically know how to communicate with the denizens of the planet. And in this case, it's no different. And I know that they've since explained that as saying everybody who occupies the TARDIS provides them with the knowledge they need.
Well, yes, good. Yes, it is. It's good. Excellent, excellent.
They venture out into this primordial landscape, and if I recall correctly, they are quickly captured by these cave people.
I believe the doctor had set out to take some samples to test the soil. I don't remember exactly what he was testing.
1 or 2 samples and I should be able to make an estimate. The rock pieces and a few plants.
But it got to a point where there was a caveman off to the side and he started to light a pipe, and the caveman saw he was able to make fire. So then he was taken to the rest of the tribe saying that he was able to produce fire from his fingers and smoke from his mouth.
Inside, he's full of fire.
Then Ian, Barbara, and Susan were all looking for him, and then Susan became a bit hysterical.
Let us find him!
Susan!
I must see!
Well, I guess, again, the way it was written, I think is just way over the top, really overly dramatic. But then they were able to find he was in that cave. They threw him on this flat rock. And that's where the whole dispute about him being able to make fire.
Make fire! Come from your fingers as I saw it today! I have no matches! I cannot make fire!
In other caves, people arguing that, they don't believe him.
This is more of your lies.
And the main guy, the main cave guy, he's the one who was trying to make fire at the very beginning of the episode. And then there's the rival to the leadership of the tribe. Is it not odd that the Doctor is so willing to just show these people how to do technological things?
I can make fire for you. Let me go, and I'll make all the fire you want.
I know that Doctor Who doesn't play on the same rules as Star Trek all the time, but he did make it a point of not letting Ian and Barbara out of the TARDIS because he thought they'd seen too much of his technology.
No, my child, we both know that we cannot let our secret loose into the world of the 20th century.
They won't say anything.
My dear child, of course they will. Put yourself in their place.
So as a time traveler, one would think that he wouldn't be so quick to want to give the cave people what they want. But maybe survival's more important. I don't know.
Oh my God.
If Pompeii is destroyed, then it's not just history. It's me.
I thought that was a little odd.
Yeah, that's kind of how it seemed to me. It just seems like he just gave in, too fast. It's like, okay, I'll show you how everybody can make fire. It's like, it's like, okay, let me out of here.
He says he can make fire for us.
They get thrown into this cave of skulls. They're left there ostensibly to die. But there's also this sort of hidden way out of the cave. In the next episode, when it begins, the old lady, she knows that back way in. And she goes into the cave of skulls and tells them once again, do not give them the secret of fire.
I will set you free if you will go away and not make fire.
I never quite understood her absolute reticence.
Fire will kill us all in the end.
I would have thought that the matriarch of the tribe would know that fire helps them survive. It helps them stay warm. It helps them cook their food. I know they were just learning these things according to the story itself, but did you pick up on any of the logic as to why she was so against the fire, especially when it seemed like it was her husband, the former and now dead leader of the tribe, that harnessed that power?
The only thing that I can remember that she did say was that she didn't want them to give them fire because it just brings destruction and death.
My father made fire.
They killed him for it.
I don't really remember anything, her elaborating anymore on exactly what had happened, that they didn't want them to have the fire.
She lets them go. She shows them the way out, and they try to get away. Unfortunately, the main candidate for being the next leader of the tribe, he figures out that she's let them escape, and he kind of manhandles her and throws her to the ground of the cave and then runs off. She's alive, but, he kind of roughed her up. When they escape the cave, they're out there in the middle of the night knowing that there are these dangerous beasts out there that could get them between the cave and the TARDIS. The big leader guy, in an attempt to get them back, gets attacked by one of these beasts and he's bleeding out. But Ian and Barbara, they go back because they know modern medicine, even basic techniques that will save this guy's life.
I am your friend. I want to help him. Well, we've lost our chance of getting away.
They tended to him, they built this makeshift stretcher, and they took him back to the cave.
1 minute ago, we were trying desperately to get away from these savages.
All right, now we're helping them.
The settings are very limited. You've got the cave, the jungle pathway, the hill the TARDIS is on, the cave, the jungle pathway, the hill, and they keep bouncing back and forth between these three locations. I think the lady's found dead when they're brought back.
Kill the old woman.
He immediately tries to tell everybody, oh, well, no, it was the other guy that killed him, the guy that wants to be your leader. And the doctor's like, but he's got no blood on his knife.
This knife shows what it has done. There is blood on it. You killed the old woman.
And so they try to help the cave people start to determine the malignant individuals in a society and say,
he is a bad leader. We'll kill you all.
You need to cast out liars like this guy. He's a murderer and a liar. But then even after they've helped them out, the main guy is like, hey, thanks for making sure that nobody thought I murdered the old lady.
Take them to the Cave of Skulls.
Do not try to leave here.
They save his standing with the tribe by proving he's not a murderer, and then he still throws him in the cave anyway.
Right after he saved their life. He saved his life.
But we helped you. We gave you fire.
Because he sees them as another tribe. He thinks they're from over the mountains. And he's like, your tribe and my tribe are now together by force. He's not giving them a choice. They build a fire in the Cave of Skulls while he watches. It's Ian that builds the fire.
We are making fire for you.
I am watching. The whole tribe should be watching. Everyone should know how to make fire.
And the doctor explains, yes, I'm the leader of the tribe, but in our tribe, everybody knows the secret of fire. Therefore, the secret of fire is not special. It doesn't make anybody special.
I do not believe this. He is the least important because we can all make fire.
That's when he reveals, well, I'm going to go show everybody the fire, because at that point, even though they've kicked the one guy out, they're still upset that their alleged leader doesn't have the secret of fire and their food stocks have run dry. So they're starting to get squirrely.
There is no leader.
So he comes out of the Cave of Skulls with this flaming torch that he got from the campfire they built. And they're like, oh, look, you're the man. You made fire. Woo!
Have made fire!
Then he goes back in there and he's like, so, even though I'm not letting you out, we're partners now.
Your tribe and my tribe will join together.
We don't want to stay here.
Why?
I felt like there was a lot of back and forth going on for a story that didn't have much to it. I felt like this episode could have been like the Sontaran experiment, where it was a two-parter. And it was like burp, burp, and done.
Yeah, and as far as the joining together and forcing them as one tribe and showing them the fire, they didn't want nothing to do with that. They wanted to get out because the doctor wanted to know when they can leave.
Some way of taking the fire away from them. Scaring them somehow.
Susan came up with the idea of putting the skull on top of the torch, sticking it in the ground, and then when they came and they thought they were dead, that was their opportunity to sneak out. The third episode was very slow, where they escaped and then they're trying to get back to the Tardis, and then they ended up going back. It was just a long, drawn-out episode. Three episodes probably would have been good for this series.
And I know that there are people who talk about how The Unearthly Child is like one of the great episodes or stories of Doctor Who, and I feel like most of that is because the first episode sets everything up and it's really strong. I don't know if the Unearthly Child's reputation actually rides on the last 3/4. I'm not saying it's bad. There's nothing bad in the last 3/4 of it. It's not unwatchable.
Yeah.
It just seems rather repetitive and bloated and not memorable.
Stories are what memories go when they're forgotten.
The story feels like it's on a ping pong table and it just keeps going back and forth. If I was standing in a room full of, dyed-in-the-wool Doctor Who fans who were primed to rip me apart, the statement that I would make right before they rip me apart would simply be that Unearthly Child's legend, its status as one of the great Doctor Who stories of all time, is due to the fact that the first episode is so mysterious and strong.
If you're referencing just the one first episode, yes, I could see this was a very good episode. Kind of gives you a little bit of tease of what's to come. I'd be interested to see what comes next. But as this being a 4-parter and then what it led into, that's where it became very repetitive. So as a whole 4-parter that it is, it's really not the greatest story. But if you focus on just the first episode, yeah, I would definitely like to see, okay, well, what's going to happen next? So I would have liked to see a second episode of, what it would have been. And then after as a complete full story, it really wasn't the greatest for me.
What do you make of William Hartnell's aired performance as the first Doctor? Not rate this one, but how does it strike you? How does it feel to you?
Initially, he came off a little abrasive, but then, as the episodes go on, he was kind of a little more open to suggestion. When they were tied up, he was looking for Ian for his insight, and then Ian acknowledged that.
No, we've got to free you first. You're the strongest, and you may have to defend us.
So he was actually starting to come around throughout the episode to allow other people's insight and advice, opposed to doing things his own way, or where Susan even referenced he kind of gets pouty when he doesn't get his own way.
How about giving us a hand, Doctor?
He's always like this if he doesn't get his own way.
The thing I found really fascinating about that first part of Unearthly Child, because we've seen so much Doctor Who, both in the classic and in the modern era, where even though every actor playing the Doctor is different, they all have a general balance beam they walk on of being benevolent and being kind and that kind of thing.
There isn't time to vote on it.
Just as long as you understand that I won't follow your orders blindly.
This Doctor, while he wasn't violent in any way...
Let go of me.
What are you doing?
Well,
he made it very clear, you guys have seen too much, and I'm not letting you out of this box.
Oh, how I wish.
Have you taken us back to our own time?
You know I can't do that. Please be reasonable.
What?
And that whole argument between him and Ian in that first encounter where he's like, you're going to let us out of here, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, you're going to prove to us, because this whole, Ian thought the whole thing was just a parlor trick. He thought the whole thing was just a hoax.
It can move anywhere in time and space?
Yes.
Quite so.
But that's ridiculous.
And so the Doctor says, well, watch this. Boop, boop, boop.
Barbara, you don't believe all this nonsense?
I'm admittedly not used to that kind of Doctor.
You're so narrow-minded, aren't you?
There is now a distance that the companions and the Doctor have to travel in order to meet halfway. Whereas in a lot of the shows, there's kind of this almost like meet cute kind of thing between the Doctors and the companions.
I'm your new assistant.
Oh, no. You realize this is a very dangerous place to be in.
Well, I can't help that. I'm stuck here now.
I won't hurt you.
The evil one.
Well, nobody's perfect, but that's overstating it a little.
Oh, go on, Professor. Let me come too.
The little character business, but not this actual, philosophical personality conflict that was going on like it was here.
Then you'll let us go.
But we ought to go with him now.
This is a very crowded TARDIS. It's as crowded as Peter Davison's will be. We spent so much time talking about Susan in that very first episode. You get interested in her, and then suddenly it's this caveman story. And Susan, aside from figuring out that you can put a torch up a skull's head and flame on, aside from that, I really don't recall or retain much of Susan's role in this story. I want to see more of Susan and her character, and I hope we get that in future episodes. Ian is very headstrong and capable, and Barbara is very stalwart, and she has her convictions, and, that's all great. I don't have a problem with them as people, but I want to see how Susan fits into this puzzle a lot more. She's the catalyst because she's interesting, not because they just followed her like a trail of breadcrumbs.
Yeah, Barbara and Ian did overshadow her. I do agree with you on that. Yeah, she was the primary part of the first episode, and then as Barbara and Ian ended up in the TARDIS, and as the story progressed, she was overshadowed. She was trying to be helpful, and then the cave woman pushed her away, and then right away she's hiding behind Ian until you get later into the episode where she put the skull on the torch. That really wasn't much else that she was doing. It was Barbara and Ian, front and center with the Doctor, and she was pushed to the back. And I think going forward we need to see more of her and what she can do.
Now, what does the radiation read, Susan?
It's reading normal, Grandfather.
I really loved the cliffhanger on this one, though, at the end.
Yes.
I freely admit I thought the cliffhanger at the end of this story going into the next one was excellent, because they established very clearly at the beginning of the second episode of Unearthly Child that the Doctor always checks the air and radiation levels outside before he opens the doors of the TARDIS. And so Susan then goes and checks the radiation levels, and she says, yes, everything's normal, and they get their coats literally to go out. And as they walk off camera, the camera pans down to the radiation meter, and it goes, like the TARDIS was catching up with its calibration.
Now I'm at a point where, yes, I want to see what happens next. It caught my attention. I want to know where they are and what is going to happen next. I'm very curious.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to watch the next Hartnell story. Fortunately and unfortunately, that is not the next story we're going to watch. We are, according to our plan, we're going to switch over to Modern Who.
Yes.
And we're going to be watching the first Modern Who episode with Christopher Eccleston, which is Rose.
Rose, yes.
Could have been worse.
So thanks for watching this episode, everyone. If you haven't seen the original episode where Mike and I talk about our own personal introductions to Doctor Who, you can click the link at the end of this video and you can check that out. And we'll see you on the next episode of our RetroBlasting Doctor Who retrospective, Rose. See you soon.